Email if you'd like to put email feedback as well. That'll all be at the end. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Ali because I know that you'll all be very eager to get started. So thank you, Ali.
All right, thank you so much, Robin, for the intro. So welcome, guys. Welcome back if this is your repeat class with me, and welcome if this is your first time. We're going to do a class today on back pain, a 30-minute program. It's going to be almost entirely movement-based. I will stick around a little bit at the end if you guys have questions. So if you want to write into the chat at any point through the program, I will read through all of that at the end and make sure I address your questions. And one thing I want to highlight before we get started is that everyone's backs are different. We're all dealing with different aches and pains, and you know your body better than I do. So I encourage you to listen to your body and take a modification if you need to. I offer lots of options for this class. So work within what feels good for your body, and that's how you will get the most out of this program. So please don't be afraid to modify if you feel like you need to. With that being said, we're going to start down and get right into our movements. So I'm going to bring my roller with me, and I will be starting with the roller perpendicular to my mat, and I'm going to bend my knees and put my feet on the other side of the roller. Okay, this is just to help me with my setup for our first exercise. So now I'm going to lie down on my back, and we're actually going to start with the roller underneath your sacrum. And if you're not sure where your sacrum is the bony part of your pelvis under your low back. So what I'm going to do is lift my hips up and pull the roller until it's under my sacrum. It should feel fairly comfortable and supported to be in that position. And you can sort of wiggle around a little bit until you find the spot that's most comfortable, but you're just gonna let your body relax. And the reason we start our back pain class like this is because a little bit of elevation of the hips relative to the shoulders decompresses our spine. So if you think about how our spine when we're sitting is sort of compressed over the course of the day, this is taking away some of that compression. So I like to show people, especially people who have lower back pain, this is a quick little trick if your back is starting to get really sore, to just lay here like this. It's probably one of the easiest exercises you've ever done once you've been set up. You get to just hang out like this. And as we lie here, we'll focus in on our breathing for just a moment. So feeling the front of your rib cage and your belly open up and expand. And then as you exhale, feel the closure of your two ribs together as though you have a corset on and you're tightening up your corset. So we always talk about breathing here because of course our breath is closely connected with how our spine moves, both our upper and our lower back. So we'll lie here for just another breath. And then we're going to take this into our first stretch of the day. So we're set up really nicely in this position to stretch our hip flexors, which are on the front of our thighs. Our hip flexors also tend to get tight when we spend a lot of time sitting. So the way we'll set up for this is by pulling the right knee in towards your chest. You're going to hug that knee gently with both hands and then straighten out your left leg. Let it drape over the shape of your roller. And so you should feel sort of a gentle stretch across the front of your left hip. It's not going to be intense. It shouldn't be painful. If you don't feel the stretch, try pushing your knee towards the floor and bringing your left leg slightly to the right, so more towards the midline of your body. And then you can pull the right knee a little bit closer to your chest. And just breathe and hold. This is sort of more of a passive stretch, and so it may take a moment or two for your body to relax in this position. There's also a chance that your foot is not even able to reach the floor, and that's okay. Just let it hang there, even if your knee is a little bit bent. Let your body be relaxed. And we'll take one more deep breath here. And then to switch sides, I like to bring the left knee in towards my chest first, and then go ahead and extend the right leg. And same thing, you can think about pressing the front of, the back of your right knee down towards the floor and maybe bringing your knee a little bit closer to the midline of your body. So again, you're just feeling that nice opening of the front of your hips. Feel the heaviness of your tailbone down on the roller. And allow yourself to breathe here. Again, this can be intense, and sometimes our body responds by trying to hold our breath. Holding our breath can actually increase the intra-abdominal pressure around our spine. So you want to just breathe. There's not a right or wrong way to do it, but just make sure you are breathing. Good. Okay, so we're going to take this into our first core exercise. And so I like to bring both knees in towards the chest. Very gently, just rock your hips side to side. If you feel like your roller is going to slip, you can always take your hands right to the sides of the roller and just hold it there. And what we're going to do is lift the legs to a tabletop position. Tabletop is when your knees are right over your hip joint. So right away, you may feel that your rib cage has popped off the mat. You want to think of pressing the back of your ribs, and especially around your shoulder blades, down into the floor or your mat. Keeping that rib position, go ahead and press one leg out to the center of the room and then the other. So as you alternate one leg at a time, you should start to feel some of your core muscles start to kick on. And if you want to modify, you're going to push your legs up a little bit higher. If you want to challenge, you're going to press your legs down a little bit lower. So find that sweet spot where this feels like a challenge, but it's not painful for your back, and you're able to maintain the rib position pushing down to the floor. We'll go for 3 more, and 2. One more time, bend both knees in, plant both feet down. We're going to lift the hips up and push the roller out to drop our hips down to the floor. Now, keeping your roller here, you're actually going to place it underneath the arches of your feet. And you want the roller still to be fairly close to your bottom. If the roller is really far away, it's going to be very stressful for your hamstrings as we do this next exercise. So we're going to try a bridging exercise, which is meant to strengthen our glutes. And our glutes are really important. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the term glutes, those are our hip muscles, our butt muscles. And they support our spine when we're squatting and when we're bending over. So what we're going to do is try and keep the roller still and lift your hips up into a bridge. Then go ahead and gently lower your hips down. Now, if you feel like having your feet on the roller is too much, you can remove the roller and do this exercise with your feet on the floor. If you feel like your hamstrings are going to get a cramp, imagine hugging your knees together as though I placed a pillow or a small ball between your knees. That should help you to put more of the work into the glutes and to take some of the stress off of your hamstrings. Now we're going to try and hold it on this next one. So go ahead and lift up and hold. If you feel strong here and you want to try a little challenge, roll the roller 1 or 2 inches away from you and pull it back in. As you move the roller, try and keep your glutes active and your hips lifted. So you may feel your hips wanting to drop down. Can you keep them lifted as you roll in and out? We'll try 3 more. And 2. Last time, drop your hips down. And then very carefully take your feet off and you can press yourself on up to sitting. Nice job, guys. We are going to roll out the hamstrings, so don't worry. I know they just got a lot of work there. That's coming. But before we do that, we're going to work on the upper back a little bit. So I'm going to now take my roller. I'm still keeping it perpendicular to my spine, but this time I'm going to put the roller between my shoulder blades. If you do have longer hair, you may want to move your hair, or if you have a hooded sweatshirt, move that out of the way. And then you're going to lie down so that your shoulder blades are on the roller, holding your head with your hands and bending your knees. So take a moment to set up like this. And what we're going to do is roll our spine along our rib cage. And I want to show you guys just for a moment. You can stay seated. My rib cage kind of stops right around the lower back, and it comes all the way up to the base of my neck. You don't want to roll above or below those points. So it's right where you feel your ribs. We're going to hold our spine here. lift our hips up and roll right to the base of your neck, and then all the way down through your rib cage. You're not going to go into the lower back. We're just rolling back and forth, keeping the hips lifted. This is sort of an assessment of our spine. So when you first start doing this, it might feel really quite uncomfortable and tight, especially if this is the first movement you've done all day. So that's okay. You can always place your hips down, take a quick rest, and then go back into it. But what we're working here is just some of the muscles that fall along our back, as well as some of the joints along our rib cage and our spine. So because we're addressing some of the joints here, you may actually hear some cracking or popping, and as long as it's not painful, that's normal. Be gentle. We're just rolling back and forth, using the push and pull of our legs to create that movement. Now, as you're rolling here, you might find certain spots are much tighter than the others. So I want you guys to start to tune in and notice where those tight spots are, because we're going to spend an extra moment addressing those in just a second here. So find one of those tight spots, and you're going to pause over that tight spot. From here, you place your bottom down, and then you're going to actually lean back over the roller. Now, one distinction I like to make here as you lean back is that it's not the front of your ribs popping up. You actually still want to keep your rib cage down and think of dropping your sternum over the roller. And that might mean you can't go quite as far, but it will target the stretch more to your back and less to your neck and your very low spine. So once you have stretched at that particular spot a couple of times, you can choose to hold it, or you can choose to kind of come up and down almost like a mini crunching motion. You can choose a different spot. So now I might roll a little lower on my spine, put my butt down again onto the floor, and then slowly drop my chest over the shape of the roller and then come back up. Now, I have a very flexible spine, so this may not look the same for you. Work within what's comfortable for your body. One common mistake I see here is a really big drop back of the neck and not a lot of movement from the upper back. Our necks already tend to be quite flexible, and it can actually be a little stressful to have our head hanging back like that. Do make sure you're using your arms to support your head. And one quick way to know that you're not overextending your neck is to make sure you can see the tops of your knees the whole time. Okay, so just nice and easy, seeing the tops of your knees, but still letting your spine drape backwards. So I'm gonna let you guys try one more spot there, maybe roll around a little bit, place your bottom down, and then go ahead and allow your spine to drape over the shape of the roller and slowly coming back up. Excellent. We'll do 2 more there. Good. So stay like this. I'm going to sit up to show you our next movement. So we're going to continue rolling that upper back spot, but we're going to add a couple dimensions to that movement. One of which is rotation. So in rotation, it will be lifting one elbow up to the ceiling and then the other. We're also going to try side bending, which is dipping one elbow towards your hip and then the other elbow towards your hip. We're going to do all of this while we're rolling, but I just like to show you guys so you have a sense of what that movement looks like. So we're going to start first with the side bending. And so from here, you pick your hips up. I'm going to aim my left elbow towards my left hip and then start to roll. What that does is it opens up the right side of my spine so that I can get into those muscles a little bit more intensely. It kind of moves some of the bony spots out of the way so that you have better access to the soft tissue, your muscles in that area. You can also try side bending to the right. So now I'm aiming my right elbow towards my right hip, opening up my left side. And just explore that. Often when you do this side bending motion, you'll find one side is much tighter or more restricted than the other. And so maybe you want to spend an extra minute or two on that side. As you do this rolling, we'll go ahead now and introduce the rotation. So you're going to keep your hips lifted, but this time turn your right elbow up to the ceiling. As we do so, we're going to get into our left latissimus, our lat muscle. So that's often thought of as a shoulder muscle, and it is a shoulder muscle, but it also connects all the way down to our low back. And it's a spot where a lot of us tend to get pretty tight. So by improving the flexibility and the soft tissue mobility of the lat, we can really help to manage some of the tightness we feel in our lower backs. So be gentle here. This can be intense. You can always sit your bottom down and take a little rest. If that side really doesn't feel tight, go ahead and switch over, aiming your left elbow up to the ceiling and rolling out through your right side. You can go down through the right side all the way to the bottom of your ribs and then come all the way up closer to your shoulder along your shoulder blade. And just gently rolling back and forth. If there's one particular spot that's tight, you can spend an extra moment there doing smaller range of motion rolls over that spot. Or maybe you want to work the full range of motion and go in and out all the way to the bottom and the top of that muscle group. So we'll just take one more breath here. And then come back through the center. Very gently, go ahead and sit yourself on up. Nice work, guys. So hopefully already your spine is starting to feel a little bit looser, a little bit more mobile. We're going to get into a little bit more of the strength side of things and balance for our spine by using the length of the roller. So this is where if you have a shorter roller, you're going to need to modify a little bit. So I'm going to turn my roller lengthwise on the mat, and I'm actually going to lie my whole spine down along the roller. The trickiest part of this is just getting on. So what I recommend is that you sit right on the very end of your roller and then walk your hands backwards until you can lie down and make sure your head is on the roller. Now, if you have a shorter roller, you can still do this, making sure that your head and probably the upper part of your back are on the roller. And then you can either do a little bridge and hold your hips up or place a pillow underneath your hips. Okay, so at least the upper half of your body is on the roller, and the roller should follow the length of your spine. So once you're on here, take a moment and just get settled. You can let your arms open up and rest out by the side. You might even feel a nice stretch across your chest and your pectoral muscles as you lie here. But take a moment and get settled. The shape of the roller, of course, is going to align your spine in that nice flat back position. So it might feel kind of funny. I think a lot of us don't spend time with our spine stacked in this nice posture. So just take a moment to see kind of what that feels like for your body. Do you feel balanced here? Does it feel like all your body weight is to one side more than the other? Just notice that. And then we're going to take a moment to really test our balance here. And I like to test our balance in this position because we can tell if we are favoring one side of our body over the other. So what you'll do is walk your feet a little closer towards one another, about hips distance apart. And then you're going to carefully lift both arms up to the ceiling. And just take a moment to settle in here. You may actually feel like you're going to tumble right off the roller, and that's okay. Bring your hand down if you need to. But take a moment again to reset in, see which side of your body is dominating, which side is doing more of the work. And just notice that and see if you can actually get yourself centered and balanced on the roller. Now we're going to challenge that balance a little bit by returning the hands back down to the floor, but this time just with the tips of our fingers. So my arm is not resting on the floor, it's just the tippity tips of my fingers. And we're going to try marching the feet one at a time. So for those of you with a shorter roller, hang on for a moment. We'll get to another exercise you can try. This one will be a little tricky for you. But as you're marching one at a time, I want you guys to imagine the movement is kind of like what your legs would do when you're walking or when you're going up and down stairs. So this might already feel pretty unstable. And if it does, stay here. But if you feel kind of strong and confident, try lifting one hand and see if you can continue marching. What's going to help keep you strong and steady on the roller is keeping your core active and engaged. Try your other hand. So bring the opposite hand down, lift, and see how that side feels. Usually the second side is a little bit harder because our body likes to choose the path of least resistance. If you would like, for an ultimate challenge, lift both hands and try your march. And you might need to slow down your movement patterns a little bit here. This is something I've been practicing for a long time, and it's still tricky. So just notice it, and you can always come back to having both hands down. So that looks at how we're able to create stability in our spine when we're doing a leg movement like walking. Now let's look at how can we create stability in our spine when we do an arm movement. So keep your feet in that hips distance apart and reach both arms back up to the ceiling. This time we're going to try dropping one arm out to the side and bringing it back through the center. Then we'll try the other side, dropping it out to the side and back through the center. Now, I don't really care how far your arms go here. You're going to lower your arm only as far as you can without tipping over or without your knees compensating by swinging to the other side. And also with this, you'll probably find one side much harder than the other. This looks at how stable we can keep our spine when you're doing something like reaching for a dish at a high shelf, or being able to push or pull something with one side of your body but not the other. Good. We'll try 3 more and 2 more. 1 more time. Good. Okay, now to come off of this, gracefully just roll to the side. And I say gracefully in a comical way because there's really no graceful way to do that, but thankfully you're not super high from the floor, so it shouldn't be too difficult, just rolling off to the side and sitting on up. So now we're going to get into a little bit more work for the soft tissue. And what soft tissue means is the muscles in the area, the fascia, even some of the tendons and ligaments around our extremities. So we're going to start by working into our calf muscles. I'll turn my roller back to that perpendicular direction, and I'm going to rest sort of the meat center of my calf muscles right on top of the roller. Now, the reason we work our calf muscles is a couple things. One, they tend to be our first shock absorbers for our body when we're walking, and so for our back, it's very important to have good shock absorption so all the force doesn't go into our back. Secondly, our sciatic nerve runs right down to our feet through our calf muscles. So with anybody who has a history of sciatica, it may be worth addressing the mobility of the muscles in that area. So we're going to reach our hands about 6 to 12 inches behind our body, lift our hips into a little hover, and start to roll the length of the calf. Now, secretly, this also doubles as a nice abdominal exercise to keep our hips hovering off the floor. So nice and easy, you're just gonna start assessing, again, looking for those tight spots. If you find one, you can spend an extra moment or two. If this feels like, you know, I'm not really getting a lot out of this isn't enough pressure for me, you can cross one ankle on top of the other to bias all of the pressure and body weight to one side, and then try the same thing for the other side. Personally, for me, I think that's too much pressure, so I like to stick with the double leg. Now, the other variation you can add in here is twisting a little bit. So you can turn your legs to one side to get the in and outside part of your calf, and then you can do the same thing for the other side. So nice and easy, just rolling down all the way towards your ankles, and then maybe pressing up all the way towards the back of the knee. And this isn't comfortable, but it shouldn't be tremendously painful. If you find one spot that's super, super painful, try and work in the areas around it first to loosen up some of the tissue in the surrounding areas, and then revisit that spot. So we'll spend just another moment here, and certainly you could spend even 5-10 minutes on this area, but in the interest of this class, I just want to show you guys sort of how to do these movements. And you can always go back and address a particular one for a little bit longer if that feels like something your body really needs. Okay, now, one other modification. I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier. If your wrists and your arms are getting tired, you can always come down onto your forearms. It's going to be a little less pressure on your calf, but again, you can go into stacking one leg over the other. Okay, now we're going to take this up into our glutes. Our glutes, again, are also important. Like I said, they provide a lot of support for our spine, but all those same nerve roots that leave our back, they also run through our glutes. So for the same reason we address that in the calf, we're going to work up into the glute muscles. So from here, you can go ahead and sit right on top of your roller. Now, I kind of like to address one side at a time. So we're going to work into the left side first by gently tipping both of your knees to the left and bringing your left hand down behind you. You should feel like you are on the sort of meaty muscular part of your hip. We also have a couple of big bones in the hip, and it doesn't feel very good to roll right on top of the bone. And part of the reason is we have these small sacs called bursa that are there to protect our bone between the tendons that run around it. And the bursa don't like to be foam rolled. So if you're on a big bone, try and transition more into the muscular part of your hip by just rotating your spine a little bit. And then from there, you can just very gently roll back and forth. If you roll really far to the side, you're going to get more into the lateral hip muscles, the side hip muscles. If you roll more to your back, you're going to get more of that central glute muscle, the glute max. So different people are tight in different spots. Work within where you feel like you need the most energy and where you're feeling the most tension. And then to switch to the other side, you're going to place your right hand down, tip your body over to the right, tip your knees to the right, and test out that side. So for me, my right side is much tighter than my left. I might spend an extra moment or two on this side. And again, you can orient yourself more up towards the ceiling to get that more central glute max, or you can really tip to the side to get into the lateral hip, which is your glute med, your glute min. So depending where you're feeling the tension, spend a little bit of extra time on those spots. Excellent. Okay. So I know we're getting close to the end of class, and I want to show you guys the one other position that we have not really addressed yet, which is the front of our thighs. And I think for most of us who spend a lot of time sitting right now, that's another really important area to address, because when we sit, that muscle gets shortened. And so for this one, we're going to kind of roll on our stomach. And I think the easiest way to set up for this is on your forearms. So I'm keeping the roller perpendicular to my spine, and I'm going to line up my quadricep muscle, so your thigh, right on top of the roller, lowering down onto my forearms. Now you can keep your toes tucked under on the mat and just kind of army crawl with your toes and your forearms forward. If you're someone who feels like you have pretty good balance here, you can also lift your feet up and just use the push of your shoulders forward and back. Now, just like we did with the calves, if this isn't enough pressure for you, you can stack one on top of the other. So one leg right on top of the other. For me, that's too intense. I like to keep both legs down, so I feel a little bit more of a gentle soft tissue massage experience. You can also rotate very gently to one side or rotate very gently to the other side to get the inner and outer parts of your quad. And you might need to address the spots down lower by your knees, or maybe up much higher by your hips. And so just explore that. There's really no right or wrong way. Just notice where your body is feeling like it needs this tension the most. So we'll go ahead and press up and take a quick rest. So we are right at our time, and I know that was a lot to get through, but I wanted to show you guys a little bit of everything for this class. Like I said, what I hope you take away from this program is that different bodies need different things. You may have found certain spots like, wow, I really need to spend a little bit more time there, or other spots where you say, you know, I actually feel pretty good in that zone. So even after class or throughout your day, if you want to go back and spend a little bit more time on one zone, please do so. This is just sort of a taster of a bunch of different things you can do to address your body keep your body flexible to manage your back. So quickly, I'm going to take a peek. I know we have a lot of comments in the chat already. You guys are awesome for being so interactive. If there are any questions, so I see a bunch of questions about the size of the roller. The one I'm using is a 36-inch foam roller, which is considered sort of the full length. But if you're shopping for a roller, they often have anywhere from 12 up to 36 inches. So I have the longer one. It makes it easier to do some of those exercises laying on the roller. And I have questions here. Can children do these exercises? Yeah, they are appropriate for most children. I would say you probably want to have kids over the age of 10 or so, just so that they are a little bit more grown and developed. Kids who are younger tend to be pretty flexible and don't really need the same attention to soft tissue work. So I know there are a bunch of other questions in here. What I'm going to do, since we're a little over time already, is